Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mick, director, organizer, player, owner of the Los Angeles Chess Club. And this month of February 2017, and in February generally we talk about openings in our advanced Tuesday night lecture. So tonight is February 21st, and last week I showed a couple of my games against an expert that we played winner variation of French. Tonight I'll be showing two of my games against another expert, and this guy played Tarrasch Variation. So hopefully combination of last week and this week you should be really good with how to play on the black side of French. And also, as an honor to our guest Justine, half French, I chose to show French games. So I'm black here, and my opponent John Ward, an expert, he opened e4. He and I played probably about 24 games, and every time he opened the e4, and he knew I would play French, so he was well prepared. He hit the books each time, and each time came back more prepared than last time. So I had to really be careful. So against experts and masters and senior masters, I play the best line that I know against e4, which is French defense. And as I said in the other video exactly a week ago, I like French defense because it's very versatile. It's black who imposes the line to white. And after d4, d5, white has the option of exchange, which black takes with a pawn, no more bad bishop, and or advance, or knight c3, which objectively is the best move, which I showed two games last week. Tonight, both of the games that I'll be showing you guys start with knight d2. This move is famous as Tarrasch Variation. There's a player, Zygmunt Tarrasch, who is famous as a father of chess, classical chess, who played this move quite often. So against knight d2, black has two different options. He could play the positional knight f6 or tactical c5. So if you're a tactical player, you want to play c5. If you're a positional player like me, you want to play the positional line, which is knight f6. So that's what I played, and the usual continuation is e5. And after e5, we have a locked up pawn center. The game becomes more positional. One of the features of positional chess is locked up central pawns, because there's a great deal of maneuvering. There's not much tactics going on for the next 15 moves. So black usually retreats to knight f d7. And one of the most topical and fashionable lines for white is to station the bishop here, later on play c3, create a big pawn chain, heading towards king side, which indicates white's flow of his pieces should be towards the king side. And of course, because of this center pawn formation heading towards the queen side, black's strength is on the queen side, and he should push on the queen side. So the battle lines are drawn, and with bishop d3, very important move to play in French defense, advancing the c pawn, c5. White likes to keep these two pawns here for as long as possible. In other words, he doesn't take, he defends instead. This move is very tempting, and low-rated players, they love to go for one-move threats, but it's actually positionally not a good move, because after c4, bishop d3, now there are three files that will lock that pawn center, and black has no prospects pretty much of attacking on the queen side anymore. On the other hand, white can play f4, f5, knight f3, and it just leaves white a great attacking continuation. So c4 is not good. So after c5, c3, black continues attacking this square. This d4 square is the most pivotal square on the chessboard. If black ever wins a pawn here, pretty much white's center disintegrates, and black wins the game. So white must never lose a pawn here. Now white plays knight e2. Knight f3 is also playable. Trouble with knight f3 is that there are two knights fighting over one square. So in order to have a harmonious development, usually this knight goes to e3, and later on this one goes to f3. And white has a very nice harmonious development for his pieces. So after knight e2, the recommended move continuation in opening books is cd4, capture on d4. White captures back with this, and black immediately start smashing the center, f6. So what should white do now? White's best continuation is pawn takes pawn. F4 looks like a nice playable move, but it's actually a big question mark for this move. It's just a bad move. The drawback to this move is that black captures on e5. And what's the natural way for white to recapture? With the f1. And now there is a tactical flaw with this continuation. And comes a move that is a bolt from the blue, pretty much. Black to play, what's the best move?
Queen check.
Queen check is tempting, but after g3, there's no good continuation. So keep that in mind though. Queen check at some point during combination may come. But there's another move. What is it?
Knight b4.
Knight d4, black wins a pawn. A clear pawn, and this pawn is the base of this little pawn chain. In other words, when this one goes, very likely this other one will go too. And of course, if white plays knight takes, queen check. So, because of all these problems, f4 move is not a good move for white. So what should white do then against f6? White should take, and this is the recommended move that chess opening books like Modern Chess Opening or Nonce Chess Opening recommend. Now black has two ways of recapturing, either with the queen or with the knight. Knight capture is more popular, and I've seen some masters that specialize on one or the other, but this is by far more popular. So this is how the game went, knight f6, and white to play, knight f3. French defense is not a perfect setup for black. Black has this backward pawn on the e file, later on white castles and put a rook on the e file, and try to take advantage of this weakness, pawn weakness that black has here. By definition, this pawn is a backward pawn. In order for a pawn to be backward, it has to meet three criteria. One, must be exposed on a half-open file, which it is. Two, cannot be supported with a pawn. You see both black's d and f pawns have moved. And three, it cannot be advanced without losing the pawn. You see, white has a good bind on this square. If black ever advances, at least for now, he just loses it. So by definition, this is a backward pawn. It's one of the worst pawns that you can have on the chessboard. Isolated pawn is another. Double pawns is not as bad, but those are kind of weak pawns too. So, but it also creates a lot of potentials. You see, once white's e pawn is gone, you see this pawn is was a wedge in black's position, depriving black from putting pieces in these two squares. Once this pawn is gone, black occupies this square with a knight, occupies this square next with a bishop, and black will have enough counterplay in exchange for this weakness. So, after knight f3, black plays bishop d6, white castles. There are two main lines for black at this point. And this is another reason that I like French defense so much, because often it's black who imposes his line to white, and white has to know the line. In the old days, like 20 years ago or so, queen b6 was very popular, trying to hit at this weak pawn. But statistics has shown that with queen c7, black scores better. You see, sometimes in queen b6 line, white goes back to queen c7 after it gets harassed or sometimes voluntarily. But queen c7 immediately creates a big threat over here that white has to watch out for. Plus they strengthen this square one more time. In some lines, black pushes his backward pawn, gets rid of the backward pawn, and it creates a lot of potentials. Once these pawns are traded, then black would have a what's called IQP, isolated queen pawn, or pass pawn. So if it's a strong pawn, a pass pawn. So in this position, after queen c7, white played knight c3. So what do you think is the point of this move?
To fork the queen and the black bishop.
Exactly. White is much better off trading this bishop for this knight, right? Because this is black's good bishop. A bishop that is opposite color of your central pawns is by theoretical good bishop. A bishop that is same color as your central pawns, by definition, is a bad bishop, especially this one right now. Even if your bishop is outside the pawn chain, they don't call it a bad bishop because it's outside the pawn chain, but they call it a fair bishop. but it's still not a good one. So black must not allow this exchange to take place. So a6 makes sense, right? So white played bishop g5. We're on move 13, and these are all book moves so far. In other words, he and I probably spent less than a minute so far. When you know a line really good, you want to play fast to save time that you need in a middle game and end game. On the other hand, you don't want to play too fast to tell your opponents that you know this line really good and let them think longer or go to a different variation. So after bishop g5, the idea of this bishop move is not so much to take this knight, but to reroute the bishop here and trade these two bishops. You see, this is black's star piece, and white would love to have this traded with that bishop. So after bishop g5, black to play castles. And now what move? Bishop h4. Okay. So in the old days, they used to play, I mean by old days, mid-80s, they used to play bishop d7 and reroute the bishop to e8 and then eventually come here and attack along this diagonal. That was one way to activate this bishop, and then that bishop would become black's star piece. Around mid-80s, Korchnoi find a good move for black here that became very popular, and it's still today considered the best move by black. It's kind of common sense move, but at first it was hard to find this move. E5. E5 doesn't work because bishop takes here, and what does black do? Either way, no matter what he takes with a pawn or a rook, white will play knight d5 first. So black loses a pawn immediately. So the correct move by black that Korchnoi found was knight h5. Very simple idea. If white plays bishop g3 now, black will take it with the knight instead of that bishop, because that's his good piece, good bishop, and he preserved that bishop. So that was the move that I played. We probably played about a dozen times in this variation. So he knows the opening theory. I know the opening theory. White's best move is rook e1. As part of opening development, activating the rooks. Black to play g6. This move also goes along with black's strategy. Black is not trying to build up against this isolated pawn, IQP, by fianchettoing the bishop to g7, queen to g7, and hitting this twice. This is white's weakest spot, so black is going after this. Okay, in this variation, instead of rook e1, is bishop takes h7 a good continuation for white? And if king takes knight g5 and queen takes knight and all that, does it work? Is it sound? Would you do it?
Not yet. We're going to have to do one first.
Right. This is not a good continuation, even though on the black side of this, not in tournament, but in blitz, I faced this. It's totally unsound. The way you refute it is after bishop takes, you just take, and after knight g5, you simply play king h6 and guard your knight. The king looks kind of weird, so far out on the third row, but it's perfectly safe, and it's just a matter of a couple of more moves to go back to safety. There's nothing white can do in the meantime. If he tries to take advantage of this diagonal by, say, queen d2, it loses another piece after bishop f4. So this line is just not good for white. Therefore, rook e1 is the recommended move by opening books, and that's what my opponent played. So black played g6, guarding the knight, put an end to that threat, with the idea of fianchettoing the queen on g7 and hoping to win this pawn. So one of the ways that old ways of continuing, by old ways I mean late 90s, was rook c1, and when black fianchettos the queen to win a pawn on d4, white moves this bishop all the way back to b1, and this is how he would defend the pawn one more time. But they found some really good ideas for black, including rook takes knight at some point, giving up an exchange, winning this pawn. And it's very unbalanced, very interesting, lively positions. But they found better continuations for white. They realized that if this bishop ever comes here, this knight is going to take it, right? So there's no point. This is a weak pawn that black is going to invest and try to attack it. Another way that black can attack this pawn for the third time is bishop here, followed by bishop here. So white knows this, that black is going to do this, if he has done his homework, has studied this line. So he knows that this pawn eventually needs to be defended one more time. So in this position, white changes his plan and moves the bishop back to g5 with the idea of bringing it to e3 and guard that weak pawn one more time. And not only this pawn, but also this pawn that is exposed on this half-open file would be guarded with bishop here guarding both pawns. So after bishop g5, black to play, I played queen g7. That was black's plan, right? Trying to win a pawn here. And this is a very important pawn. If black wins it, this is the only white pawn in the center. And if this pawn is somehow lost, black is going to have a free hand in the center with two pawns, and white's center completely disintegrated. So it's white to play. The recommended book by openings is bishop e3 to guard it one more time. My opponent played bishop f1. This is the most modern way to play this line for both sides, white and black. You have questions?
No.
Okay. After bishop f1 is black to play. What should he do? There's a rule in chess in the middle game, which is what this is. Very important rule. It says worst piece first. That means find out which one of your pieces is least active and move that first. That rook and a bishop are not in the game quite, right? So I played bishop d7 with the idea of rook a e8, and that way I officially enter middle game, touching all of my pieces. So after bishop d7, white to play bishop e3, they played, and black to play knight f4. No knight comes. So this is the only piece that on the opponent's side of the board, right? That automatically gives some kind of tactical tricks. When a knight gets close to your king's side, you really want to watch out. Knight is the trickiest piece on the board, according to Maurice Ashley also, that when it comes to your side of the board, you really want to eliminate it. Well, he did not take it, but he tried to kick it with this pawn move. And knowing the theory of this line, of course, that's why I played knight f4, and I was ready for this move. There's an exclam move that black has right now. The game is very sharp, so anybody who tells you French defense is a boring, quiet positional lines, I know. Look at some of these French defense. That is super sharp. What do you think is the exclam move? Moving the knight is not a good option, so there's only pretty much one option, one move by black. G5. So the point is, if pawn takes, discover check, and winning the bishop. And black will have good attack, because black's strength right now is on this side. Where is white's strength? I don't know. I'm not sure he has a strength anywhere, because this pawn is also weak and it may fall, so he has to watch out for. So after g5, he played king h1. Now he's threatened to win the knight, right? Because pawn takes, he can just move the bishop somewhere. What should black do now? By the way, we're both out of book at this point. So the moves that we're making is based on what we feel like is the best on the board.
G4.
Very good. G4. And later on, when I analyzed this game at home, this game was in '92, no good chess computers back then. And I felt like this is a very interesting move. Not quite an exclam, because the position is still very unbalanced. But I felt I gave this move an interesting move, G4. So what he should have done, I felt like he should have played knight h4. And I definitely have to move my knight now. And once I move the knight, He has so many good options, including f4. See, he's got these squares under control. And if I don't take, white will have a good bind in the center, and white would be better. But instead of knight h4, he played knight e5. This move looks good also, but it has one little drawback. You know, typically, bishop is slightly better than a knight, right? Especially a bishop that is opposite color of your central pawns. That's your good bishop. I felt like this is an exceptional case, and I could win that pawn. So I took it with the bishop, and after pawn takes, knight g6. Now I'm on this 3 times, right? And I'm pretty sure that knight e5 was a move of his own, because he lost the pawn, and that was the limit of his theoretical knowledge. And after this, I felt really good about my position. I felt like, no, that should be winning. But he gave me a lot of headache. First, I started with bishop c5 question mark move. I mean, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to move the bishop here and guard the pawn one more time. But even if he did this with defending it one more time, I'm on it 3 times, and he'll be defending it twice. I can still win the pawn, right? But why is this a bad move? Bishop e5. Bishop c5. I played rook f3. You see, one of the ideas he had after moving the bishop was hitting this pawn with the queen. So I had to preserve this pawn, and I felt like this rook is very nicely entrenched here, and even if he attacks it with the bishop from here or here, I'll leave it. I'll let him take it. Then I bring another rook, and this is a fantastic outpost for black. So I play rook f3. It's white to play, and he created some tactics here. When the position becomes desperate, you look at every possibility. He played knight takes d5. I gave this move an interesting symbol. It would work if I play pawn takes, and he pushes the pawn e6 bishop, and then he captures this next, and white will have a much better position. This is where you're not supposed to cooperate with your opponent. He's got his own plan, but you still have to come up with your own plan of winning the game. So there is a move that I played that I felt like this was the only double exclam move of this game. Black to play. What do you think is best move here?
Knight on g takes e5.
Okay. I took with the c knight. The reason I took with the c knight because I want to eventually station this bishop here, and that would be a fantastic diagonal, don't you think?
Much better.
So I took with the c knight, and it's white to play. He played knight f4. Okay. What should black do now? If I play bishop here, he might play knight takes and on my queen.
Well, you could take
Or
with
should
the
I do
rook.
it anyway?
I say take with the rook, and then have the knight come in after it takes the pawn.
Well, if I take a rook takes here, pawn takes, bishop check, he has bishop g2. So I played bishop c6 anyways.
Threat.
Knight takes here doesn't work because of discovery, rook back discovery, and he loses the knight.
Or rook d3.
There are many, but I've scored, my own queen is also under attack. So there are a lot of good continuation, but I like my chances here. So when I played bishop c6, he immediately closed the diagonal, best move, bishop g2. And
Rook takes f2. Oh, we can't.
now I captured on f4 because it pretty much shatters his kingside pawn structure. So he had to take back this way. G takes f4. And the rest, as they say, is just a matter of technique. Black to play and win. And he has enough advantage to win this game. How do you think he should continue? It only lasted 7 more moves from this position.
Rook to d3.
Rook d3 is tempting, but I want to optimize some of my pieces that are not active yet.
Because then bishop takes bishop.
And by the way, I'm about to lose this knight. So what should I do?
Rook on the F file.
Rook on the F file,
Takes the pawn.
and after he takes the knight,
No, rook takes f4.
rook takes f4 now.
After.
Why not?
I had rook takes f4 immediately, and that wins a pawn, but I'm not sure it would win the game. So I play knight d3, hitting both of these undefended pieces. And I felt like this position is not overwhelming, and it's winning for black. So when there's series of exchanges have been done, that's a good time to assess the position. And there are 5 factors in assessing a position. They are in terms of importance: material, space, pawn structure, tactics, king safety. Let's go through each one of them. Materially, what does this look like? Black has queen, 2 rooks, 2 minors, and 5 pawns. White has queen, 2 rooks, 2 minors, 5 pawns. Material is equal, not a factor. The space. Who has more space? It seems that black has a little bit. Black has 3 pawns on the white side of the board, and 3 pieces, and white has 1 bishop that is hanging there and probably is going to move it now. So space-wise, it favors black. Pawn structure. Black has 1, 2, 3 pawn islands. White has 1, 2, 3 pawn islands. White has double pawns, an isolated pawn here. Black has a backward pawn here. So maybe equal, roughly equal when it comes to pawn structure. We both have weaknesses. Activity. When it comes to activity, it's clear that black has more activity. This pawn is about to drop with knight check. This pawn is about to drop with a knight or queen. This bishop is hanging right now. This pawn is hanging right now. And white has no targets other than bishop takes here, which is also no good because bishop takes and forking the queen and king. So all in all, I felt like black has a winning position. White has several weaknesses in the position. But I still have to convert. It's white to play. He played rook takes e6. So for the first time in the game, he's a pawn up. He's under time pressure too, by the way, by now. We both have spent quite a bit of time. And this move dropped a piece. Knight takes c5, and black won a piece. He's trying to make sure he doesn't lose on time, so he played rook takes c6. This bishop is my star piece. I was hoping to create some accidents here, but by this rook gone, so you see what he did, he sacked an exchange and lost the piece over here. That means he's a whole rook down now, right? But of course he could capture here, and he did. Bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes. So after winning this exchange, he is a piece down. Black is a knight ahead. So again, this is a winning position. It's just a matter of, right, finish him off in the most efficient manner. Black to play. When there are queens on board, first of all, white has a serious threat here, right? So taking this pawn is tempting, but I felt like centralizing the queen with the idea possibility of forced trading queens with a piece up makes perfect sense, right? So for example, here if he plays queen takes pawn, I'll even give him that pawn and I check here and force trade queens. So I played queen d4. He gave the check that he had, rook g1, king h8, and queen g4. Okay.
Or you can trade rooks. No.
No, I get made a rook g8, he takes.
No.
There's no threat behind rook queen g4. It looks good, but there's no threat. This square is covered, this square is covered. So every time your opponent makes a move, a couple of questions that you want to ask yourself if you're not sure what to do. Number one, and the most important one, is what phase of the game am I in? Is it opening, middle game, end game? And in this particular phase, it is this kind of ending. Okay, ending, because very many pieces have come off the board. And then whichever phase of the game it is, you ask yourself, what's the most important thing? What are the priorities in this phase of the game? Black is a piece up, and it's just a matter of converting a winning position into a win. So there are many tempting moves here, but since I want to keep my queen on this diagonal to watch out for this square, and rook g8 is not playable right now, I felt like I need to improve my knight position. So I play knight e3 with a little bit of a threat called royal fork, queen and king. Knight d3, and here he just has no good way of defending this pawn, right? The pawn is going to drop, and the queen doesn't even have a pair pet. If he defends it, say this way, I can still take. After rook takes, queen takes. He doesn't have a check, and I'm threatening mate next. So this is the moment that he finally resigned after knight d3. So we went pretty much 20 moves book. So you see, if you didn't know any of those moves, you could have lost in the opening. So it really pays off to be knowledgeable in the lines that you play. Hope you enjoyed the game. I have another game with the same opponent a week later, and with pretty much same continuation, Tarrasch line. Do you guys want to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. Come back.